Hey everybody, it's Brendon Burchard, founder of GrowthDay, and I've got an incredible session for you today on how to build team and company culture. I'll share with you today some simple strategies and some, I hope, straightforward practices and philosophies about culture, but also say, this is the stuff I'm struggling with. This is what's hard. As we built so many businesses and so many brands and advised so many, it's like, hey, this is a hard topic. Culture is not something you actually make happen. Do you know how many culture consultants there are in the world? Do you know how many organizations I've been brought in? Brendon, could you give us a speech on culture? And how many research studies have been done that actually found nothing? How many books are written on this that are completely philosophical? Because every single culture is different, just like every family is different, right? Every family has its own norms, ways of communicating, and nobody can walk into a company with, this is my culture blueprint and I'm going to create it. And everyone who says that they have done that is a liar, or maybe a dictator. No one's ever pulled it off. And I've been part of billion-dollar consulting contracts to reinvigorate a culture, and it didn't work. And anyone who says they've done it is almost always wrong. I'm a turnaround expert for culture. It's like, it's a good name, by the way. I think it's brilliant. I think it's one of the greatest offerings of all time. I just know that in real practice, it's incredibly hard. And even from the top doesn't set the culture. Because see, what we often do is we go, oh, well, you know, the culture is just how we treat each other. I'm like, okay, so we go in and we teach kindness. We go in and we teach compassion. We teach listening skills. We teach emotional intelligence, social intelligence. We teach leadership. And you can take those same concepts and you can go into every single company around the world and you can teach them. And still, every single company around the world will have its own unique blueprint, fingerprint of culture. I share all that because as I go into this, I really believe everything around culture is philosophical and it is met by dedicated, difficult practices that almost always get 10% of the result you want. How demotivating can that be? It's why most people don't try to build culture, because no matter what you do, if you have an intention on your culture, maybe you can get 10% or 15% installed, because what really happens, and research has shown over and over, is that culture is built more from the bottom up. That culture kind of actually manifests and becomes something dependent on the people in that culture. And we'll talk about the power of that. But I want to let you know, you can get, I've hired people for their experience in culture. We've got people in our different companies who we brought in to help with it. And at the end of the day, I've just learned after all of these years, I've been studying organizational communication. That was my master's degree for 20 years. And what's really evident is how little you can do to dictate it, but it's framed by these things I'm going to share with you today. That way more than what you would try to affect. I know, as I say that, it can sound, for the leaders out there, you have your team, you have your company, you're like, Brendon, this is very disempowering. I'm like, yes, it is. And it's okay that you feel like your culture isn't, oh my God, why aren't we like that company? How come my culture isn't always enthusiastic and amazing and they're awesome? I am letting you know that the research shows that is okay and that is normal. No one has a normal, high-performing culture all the time. You go read books on culture today that were written just 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And did you know the examples that they hold up? The examples that they hold up in these books on culture, most of those companies aren't high-performing anymore. Most of those companies, some of them aren't even around. Enron was highlighted in books on culture as a fantastic organization. You follow what I'm saying? Do you know how many unicorn companies from the last 5 years were all in these amazing books that now aren't even around or have gone bankrupt or are raising down rounds or just laid off 15 to 30% of their workforce, and now it's toxic? Why do I share with that? Because culture is a long game and it looks like this. And as a leader, I'm talking to you. You got to get this. This is part of it. If as a leader, you get discouraged when your culture is negative or bad, or you have the false expectation that it's going to be like this all the time and great all the time, you will get discouraged. You will stop trying. I remember when a very famous organizational expert told me, he said, Brendon, if you can get good with the fact that 10% of your hopes for your culture actually happen, you'll keep trying. But you have to accept reality. And I was like, what? I thought that was so awful when I heard that. And now after 20 years of practice, I'm like, that dude was right. Anyone know what I'm talking about right now? How easy it is to get discouraged about your own team, about your own culture. Anyone feel that? Any owners out there, any entrepreneurs out there? You're like, why is this so hard? And then you get mad at yourself as a leader. You think, I suck at culture. Or you blame your leaders. Oh, our leaders are terrible. And the fact is, no, culture is insanely hard. It's incredibly ever-changing, dynamic. It looks like this all the time. Some of you've been around long enough, you know, as leaders, culture one week looks like 100% all-stars and you're pumped. And literally the next Monday, you're like, I want to fire all these you know what I'm talking about. This is what happens in group performance. We have to understand that. Group performance inevitably over a series of years always looks like this. We tell these stories that it's going to look like this. But listen, go read Jim Collins' Good to Great. And when you read this famous book of these organizations that went from good to great, and there's all this research about what worked, most of the companies that he highlighted in there are not only weren't high performing within 3 years after the book came out, but today you're like, a lot of those don't even have a good reputation and struggle to hire. So I just want to let you know that that's normal. That's not me making any fun of or speaking down of Jim Collins' research or his background. It's just famous now. Like the companies highlighted in that book aren't actually that great anymore and don't even meet the criteria he originally outlined. Why? It's so dynamic. It's so changing. And when you can accept that, you don't get discouraged anymore. So I don't know if this message is for you. But if you're a leader of a team and you're discouraged about your culture or their performance, can I tell you something? 1000% normal. And if you get discouraged and you start blaming other people, I want to let you know something as leaders. You might not recognize it. You might not even know it. But two things come into your leadership. Number one is bitterness. Bitterness comes into your leadership because you're always disappointed in the energy, the culture, the performance of your organization. When you get bitter about your team, when you get bitter about the energy or the culture, because your expectations are, we should be 100% all the time. It's why we have cultures that are driven by negative, bitter, and burnout styled leaders. And it doesn't work. Soon as bitterness ends, or as soon as bitterness begins, performance begins to decline. The second thing that happens is, a weird thing with bitterness is the other side of that coin sometimes is resentment. and you start resenting your team for their energy, their progress, their results. And you as a leader go, I'm upset about this. And unconsciously, you disengage. You disengage because your expectation is we should be great and we should be great all the time. And the reality is, no, we should be engaged and trying hard and moving together all the time. But that means sometimes we know it's like this. And when it's like this, we don't hate each other. Okay? When it's like this, we don't hate each other. Let me tell you where most cultures fall apart. When it starts going like this, they hate each other. Leaders get down, they get discouraged. They're discouraged, they disengage. They watch people, they're bitter, they feel more resentful, they complain about each other, they start talking about each other's behind each other's back, because when it's down like this, that's when you start pointing, you blaming. And all of a sudden you rip a culture to shreds because you didn't know it was going to be like this. I always tell people, the most important part of all culture is how do we talk to each other when it's like this? How do we treat each other when it's like this? How do we stay engaged when it's like this? When things aren't going well, how do we treat each other? What are our expectations? And so we think that culture is about just high performance and being excellent all the time. I'm like, actually, most of culture is what happens when it doesn't go right. How do we communicate when there's conflict? When there's a down round, a devaluation, a layoff? Like, this is the time that who we are becomes more evident, right? When everything's going great, often that's just good and we're rocking it. So I want to begin today with you thinking about what culture is and what makes it work. I hope you already captured that in the notes here. Second, I want you to begin with a level set of your expectations. That this is not some Pollyanna session. I'm here to tell you culture is super hard. And no matter what you do as a leader, you might be able to move 10% of that over a period of time. Now, it doesn't mean that in your first year, you can turn things around and you can have 90% input. But I'm talking about on a 5-year measure. On a 5-year measure, these cards are really what drives the thing. That feeling, that sense, that energy. And I think most of these, I hope, are incredibly obvious to people. It's just that we suck at them. Okay, I hope this is really motivating right now. I don't know, am I freaking anybody out yet? I'm watching the chat. I hope I'm not freaking you out. But this is so important to level set expectations, because when your expectations are keyed towards this is going to be hard, you stay more engaged. When you're surprised that it's hard, you get discouraged and you disengage. So I want you to know, it's one of the hardest things you will ever do. Just like creating a great family with if you have kids or with a spouse, it's so hard. And if you get discouraged by your teenager and you disengage, we all know the result. So what makes the most difference? Let's work through a couple of key ideas. I don't care who you are. I don't care who you hire. I don't even care how you treat people. Almost all of culture is built over a period of time by what we do together. This is the conversation of mission. So obvious, but this is the conversation. Cultures are built around mission, not people, mission. The people will come and go, but the mission will stay. Even if the mission changes shape, it's so much more important to get the right people around the right mission than anything else. This is what shapes it. And I didn't see enough of this in the chat, so let me hit this home. What we do together and how you, as a leader, talk about and hammer home what we do together is everything in culture building. That's it. You have to talk about it all the time. You have to talk about it with a certain energy of enthusiasm and excellence and encouragement. By the way, those are our values at Growth Day, because I learned that was like one of the most important things. I was like, wow, we've got to, as a team, have empathy for each other and our clients. We have to be excellent-minded in what we do, and we have to encourage ourselves and encourage our clients. That's what we have to do. Empathy, excellence, encouragement. That's what we have to do. Those are our values, but our mission is to make self-improvement a way of life. Our mission is then to change lives. And so I have to talk about it all the time. In our chats, in our Slacks and everything, the team's always sharing, like, here's a testimonial. Look at what our customers are saying. You see how we celebrate each other in our chats, even just a chat in Growth Day. It's so important that we realize that this engagement level and the energy we bring to things is so important. But I'm telling you what, everything rests around this. Leaders, you're going to change people over a period of time because they can't support this. They don't get this. You think about like the highest level, highest performing teams and groups in the world. I've been blessed to work with them. I would say some of the most outstanding groups that I've ever worked with ever easily are more of the elite level groups in the military. And so whether it's a Green Beret or a Navy SEAL, these types of organizations and groups within them, there's just something really special. They have a clear mission and everyone talks about it. And they organize themselves around the mission more than they organize themselves even around their strengths, even around their personality, even around their compensation, even around their pay, even around their appreciation. All the things we talk about in organizations almost don't matter unless the mission is really clear, it's really talked about, and everything is built around that. And this is where we've gotten distracted in the modern era, is we want everyone to be so happy. We want everybody to, have ping pong tables and have their lunch provided. And all of a sudden, what happens is stupid creep enters into a culture. Everyone's focused on the dumbest things that don't matter to the mission. And we lose the connection with the mission, which means we lose our drive. This happens in your personal life. If you don't have some sense of mission each day, what do you do? What do you do? You get distracted. You get pulled into other people's agendas. You wander around. You scroll too much on social media. It's why I tell you in Growth Day, you got to start your day looking at your goals, visualizing them, thinking about them, reminding you, what am I trying to do this month? What am I trying to do this quarter? What am I trying to make happen for my family, for my future? Right? That orientation, connection, alignment to the future state and what we want to make happen is the key driver of our human motivation and excellence.
If you've heard me talk about fears before, I usually say that there's, sort of 3 types of fear. And those types of fear are usually oriented towards like loss. Like I'm scared I'm going to lose, my identity, or I'm scared I'm going to lose my job, or I'm going to lose money, or I'm going to lose something. I also talk about the way that we think about fear. We're also scared of the hardship pains. It's like, oh, it's going to be difficult or hard, or I won't know how to do it, or I'll look stupid, or the outcome pains. And the outcome pains are, well, if I do all that and it doesn't turn out well then, what's that say about me? Or, gosh, why would I have wasted all that time? So usually when I think about fear, I kind of think about it in, I guess, sort of 3 time periods. Like before I do the thing, I'm scared if I do that thing, I'm going to lose what I currently have. And then I think about, well, in the process of it, I'm scared I'm going to have some pain. It's going to be hardship. And I'm scared after I do it, it won't turn out well. And I think that's where our minds usually are when we are consciously contemplating fear, right? If we sit down and we think about, okay, I'm going to do this thing, and we're very conscious or aware, we sense that, oh, maybe I'll lose this, maybe that'll be hard, maybe it won't turn out well. But that's really the rationalized fears. I think there are also very impulsive fears that we have that often maybe underlie beneath the surface. The first one, which you know, is the fear of rejection. As a social species, acceptance, validation, belonging is so built into our DNA. Like it's like so important to us that doing anything that would risk us looking like a fool, that would make your family make fun of you, that would make somebody stop loving you or caring for you as much, or doing something where you would truly feel like you are now ostracized by people that you care about or care for, it's terrifying for people. It's funny though, when I sit down with a 40-year-old and we're talking about their life and you know, they're secure at home and they're secure at work and things are going good, you know, so life is good, but they're trying to reach that next level. Sometimes we have to really ask, am I fearing rejection? Is that why I'm not at the next level? Please don't tell me that fear is not an issue in your life, and please don't tell me rejection's not. Because you were scared doing that thing, and this might not have been fully conscious. You were scared doing that fully thing, jumping into that goal, that dream. Somebody might say something to you. They might hate on you on the internet. Your neighbors might look at you funny, if they don't already. You might have had somebody around kind of like you just knew their negativity would increase the more risk that you took, even though you knew those risks were really the next right actions of integrity for you, right? That's what I'm always telling people. It's like, when you're stuck and you don't know what to do, I always say, just take the next right action of integrity for you, whatever that is. Speak up for yourself, take that step, move towards that dream, whatever you got to do, take that next right action of integrity. Well, for a lot of people, that's scary when the spouse isn't going to be supportive, when the boss is going to say no, when the business is secure, but now you're going to try something new that might risk your ROI or your cash flow. It's scary. It's scary. And what we all want so much is to be loved and validated and accepted and belong. And most people don't look at this one. So let's flip it on its head a little bit. Let's flip it on its head. Because we know it's a powerful driver for people, even if they're not fully aware of how much they really are doing. You know, when people read my book, The Motivational Manifesto, they're always like, man, I didn't realize how much I was doing to please other people. Because those who, you might say, well, rejection's not an issue. And I'll go, well, are you a pleaser? Are you a people pleaser? Are you someone who makes a lot of compromises in your life to help other people because you just feel like you need to do that? And they go, yeah. I said, do you ever please other people to the detriment of yourself? They go, yeah. I go, well, then you have rejection issues. If you can't say no, you have rejection issues. If you can't take risks, you have rejection issues. If you're trying to please everybody all the time at the cost of your own health, wealth, joy, confidence in life, you have rejection issues. And so what to do? A couple simple recommendations. Number one, make sure you read at some point of your life the Motivation Manifesto. It will put fire in you to stop being a people pleaser, and it will put you back onto marching the right path for yourself. And it will do it with some language that will absolutely put some fire under your belly. Second, though, let's flip the script a little bit here. If we know that human belonging, acceptance, and love is so important to us, but right now we are focused on a rejection or a concern, what they might think if I say yes or no or don't do my thing, then maybe we can flip it and say, oh, well, what would I have to do to gain the next level of love, connection, belonging, or validation in this group of people who I want to serve, who I want to care for, who I want to contribute to? Okay, second big point up here. Oh my gosh, this is a big one. If you didn't take that big risk this year, I bet this one was rubbing on your brains. And you're like, why didn't I do that thing? It's because we fear ruin. Ruin. The fear of complete and utter irreversibility of a negative consequence. That's what it is. It's that fear of just complete irreversibility of a negative consequence. And here's the thing. If you've ever found yourself like, I'm not going to do that because that could ruin us, you're in a ruin mindset versus a learning mindset. I tell people all the time who say, well, Brendon, you don't understand, I'm not scared of ruin, I'm just scared of being disappointed. And I said, no, you're just not into learning yet. You're not scared of disappointment. You're just not into learning yet. Because when you are into learning, now disappointment and ruin aren't even on the table anymore. Because everything is a test. Everything is a data point. Everything is something to learn from. And everything is a jumping off point, not a cliff. I know a lot of people in the industry of entrepreneurialism or small business owners or people who want to be in that. And they say, well, Brendon, I'm scared to start my own business because, what do they say? I'll go broke. I'll face financial ruin. And I'm always like, you know what? No one ever hits financial ruin. They really don't. There is no financial can't come back from place because every person can make a new dollar, right? And that new dollar that's one peg up and another new dollar, another new dollar. And I speak to this not flippantly to you. I went bankrupt in my life, really. I mean, full-on bankruptcy in the early part of my life. When I first started my first business and I was trying to do teaching and training and online training and workshops, I didn't know what I was doing. Totally went bankrupt. And I never thought, this is forever. Oh my God. I was like, you know what? This sucks. Not what I want. So what's the next right action of integrity? Why is it important that I still show up and deliver with excellence? What will I do today? If there is tomorrow, there is no ruin. If there is tomorrow, there is no ruin. So what do? As soon as you start feeling yourself catastrophizing, remember to ask yourself better questions and say, okay, not what I wanted, so what should I do today? Not what I wanted, what am I going to do tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening to start moving it forward, to making that next dollar or that next right action of integrity, to make that next call, that next email. There's always a next, right? Always a next. It's one of the great 4-letter words of all time. Next, right? So ruin shouldn't be stopping you. Fear of ruin, you just have to know where that is because what you're doing is you're catastrophizing. And this is really important. If you don't feel like you made big leaps this year, you were scared. You were like, I'm going to jump off this cliff and take this action and I'm going to fall to my death. Ruin, death, destruction. Instead of saying, I'm going to jump off this cliff and I'm going to fly, baby. I don't know how, and I might fall for a little bit, but I'm going to flap those wings and at some point I'm going to catch that wind and here we go. Your expectancy was in the gutter versus in the air. You were looking down versus looking up. You were feeling down versus animating yourself so you felt better and that you moved further. So my friends, be wary of the ruinous thoughts, those global, catastrophizing, dead, negative, forever things that you have. As soon as you hear it, you got to flip it. As soon as you hear it, you got to flip it. Third big idea in overcoming our fears is that fear of regret. Fear of regret is such a sort of, I would say, it's like a stake in the ground that you're tied to. You know, when you just, you want to go beyond a boundary, but this fear of regret stops you. Because you don't want to regret taking an action, because if you took an action and you were rejected and you were ruinous and then you felt like, I knew I shouldn't have done that, well, how doubly, doesn't this make everything else worse? Right? If you fear these things and they happen, now you regret the action, is 10 times worse. But that's what we keep doing. We 10 times our fears by going, well, if I do it, I'll regret it. And so we got to, just like other things, we have to flip this a little bit and we have to go, oh, okay, well, what if what if I do positive things so that I don't have negative regrets? Versus saying, well, I don't want to do that because I would experience negative regret. Does that make sense? So what positive things can you do so you don't have regret versus fearing something and stopping so you don't have regret? Meaning most people use regret the wrong way. They use regret as a reason to not do something. I don't want to do that because I'll regret it. Versus I'm going to do those things so I don't have regret. Right? Many of you guys know my story from my car accident as a 19-year-old kid. Part of the reason I lived so courageously and boldly and I put myself out there so much all the time is because I don't want to get to the end of my life and say, you know what, I served half-assed because I was scared. I don't want to get to the end of my life and regret going through so many days not present, going through so many days just going through the motions, going through so many days not engaged with my passions, my enthusiasms, my loves, my people. Like, I don't want to be that guy who's rocking on the rocket chair saying, I wish I woulda, shoulda, coulda at the end of my life. So I take positive daily actions to avoid that type of experience. Does it make sense? And then I would also say, same thing with regret and ruin, they're really connected so closely in that we think, well, you know, I don't want to get to the end of my life, wish I woulda, shoulda, coulda, and act like there's still not a tomorrow. The ideal of hope for a better tomorrow is one of the great deconstructors of fear. Because most of our fear is tied to, there's a block there. Like fear introduces like this black wall in front of us. And we forget on the other side, there's all this open field of freedom. And we just keep thinking, our fear like narrows our view so tightly that we forget that there's tomorrow. So people, their regrets are held so close. Like, I don't want to do that because I'll regret that and it'll be irrecoverable. And I'm just like, well, when you have a learning mindset, there's not much regret. Like, just like I don't have a lot of disappointment, I also don't have a lot of regret. Because I was like, oh, I did that, didn't work out, darn it, okay, shouldn't have done that, learn, adjust behavior, right? A lot of people who struggle with concerns, and here's a tell, if you're a person who if regret is driving you, if this year you also felt a lot of guilt, guilt is a great tell that you have a psychological propensity for the fear of regret. They're like, twins. It's just like people who have lots of fear of regret also tend to have high psychological concern for guilt. Like they're guilty. They feel guilty all the time. I feel guilty, I feel guilty, I feel guilty, I feel guilty. And so guess what? I don't want to do anything else because I'll regret it. Because I already feel bad about myself. So why take an action? I feel so bad about myself, why take an action? And so their regret has become something that has stopped them. Their guilt is something that adds on to that. And now they're immobilized because of high fear of regret and psychological guiltiness. And so what I tell people, I say, look, if you got a lot of guilt, there's the simplest ways out, right? The simplest ways out of guilt. I mean, the path out of guilt starts at the path of forgiveness. For yourself, for other people. And I also tell people this, we think of forgiveness often as forgiveness of just ourselves, which you should do. I mean, you gotta let it go. You can't advance with all the baggage of self-hate. You gotta let that stuff go. And so what I tell people is, as much as we fear that, I'm gonna regret and I have a lot of guilt and they don't let that go and they think forgiveness is just about themselves and others, I also go, you know what? Forgive yesterday. You weren't as wise or intentional or thoughtful as you could be today. And remember, that's the ideal of hope. I go, oh, I don't have to regret yesterday. I don't have to be guilty about yesterday, because you know what? I'm better today. I learned from that. I'm telling you, the learning mindset is the great release of fear. Because as soon as you approach it, it's like, I'm going to learn through it and get better. Now the fear doesn't stop you anymore. Because you don't say, well, I'm going to get stuck here, or this will happen forever. The forever goes away when you finally step into the realization that there is hope, there is a tomorrow. Because you know what I think one side of regret would be? To have lived your whole life with a bleak outlook. Because you'll get to the end and you go, I didn't appreciate it. I didn't appreciate all those days I had. I didn't appreciate all the second chances I had every time I woke up a new Monday morning. I didn't appreciate it. I missed the whole ride. You know what? I stood in line for the ride of life the whole time. I never got on the ride. I was just a waiter. I was just a watcher. I never really engaged. That's real regret. And I can share with that because I've been there in hospices with people in the last weeks, hours, minutes of their life. And if there is regret, it's usually a lack of full engagement with life. I didn't really show up. I didn't appreciate what I had. So if you got a lot of regret, you got to learn to forgive the guilt, forgive the bad days, and start appreciating today again. Because you know what? When you fall in love with the moment, when you fall in love with this opportunity you have, when you really appreciate the now, then there's not a lot of room for fear in that, right? In that deep feeling of appreciation, it's hard for fear to edge itself in. So let go of the regret concerns, my friend. There's a tomorrow, and it's going to be amazing. Last piece, number 4. This is what we really fear. Responsibility. We fear that we are actually very responsible for our lives. It's like that great Marianne Williamson quote you've ever heard, right? The thing we fear so much, she was basically saying, I don't remember the exact quote, but she was basically that, we're not so much afraid that we're inadequate. We're actually fearful of our full power. Because what would that really bring out in us? What would that say if we were fully responsible for the outcomes in our life? What would it say if we had more power than we were actualizing in life? That's scary. People are scared of responsibility. And in very tactical ways. Like if I said to you, hey, I'm going to make you responsible for, let's say you own a small business. And I say, I'm going to make you responsible for 50 more employees and all of their mortgages. A lot of people go, oh my God, right? Total terror to be responsible for other people's lives, right? Or other people's mortgages or other people's whatevers. And so responsibility is scary to people, right? I mean, look at any great personal development teacher. At the base of everything they teach is personal responsibility, or what used to be called self-reliance. That sense of personal power that says, I am in command of my life. Doesn't mean you're in command of everything that happens to you in life, but you are in command of your responses. And what we are scared of is that we won't show up as our best self to deal with those demands. Right? We're scared of taking full responsibility for everything, because what would that say about our lives? But I take full responsibility for everything in my life. It doesn't mean I believe I caused everything. Does that make sense? So law of attraction, people calm down. 1 second. Take a breather. I'm not saying you attracted cancer, babe. I'm not saying you attracted that mean person. I'm not saying you attracted the bankruptcy. Right? A lot of that bad teaching early on in the days of the new law of attraction, was just misguided, because there's lots of things that happen to us that are cosmic, chaotic, weird things that we can't explain or will never be able to understand. It's things that we didn't attract, we didn't want to happen. They happen, and it wasn't because you had bad character or you were a negative person or you'd done something bad. Look, bad things happen to good people. If you haven't read it, it's a great book, How Good People Deal with Bad Things. But I would also share with you that ultimately we are responsible for our responses. We are responsible for the people who we become. Maybe you didn't ask for that cancer. You are responsible for how you are going to deal with that. And for those who go, well, that's too flippant to say, I'm like, I just remind you, go back and read some Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. He said it best. He said, the last of the human freedoms is the ability to choose one's own attitude. They can take away everything else, but they can't take away how you respond in mind. And when you know that, that gives you great power and responsibility in life. And so when you feel like a victim, this is one of your great fears. You might not call it that. You might not recognize it. And I just go, oh, you're scared of responsibility. I say this to people all the time who say, Brendon, I have a big dream. I go, have you told your family, your friends, the people around you what your big dream is? Well, no. I said, well, you're dealing with this, and you're dealing with this. You're scared that by putting it out there, you won't be able to handle the pressure. You won't be able to handle the demands. That's fear of responsibility. I'm fearful that I won't be able to be able to deal with the stuff. And I'm just like, there's a tomorrow. You can learn. Like, I have extreme personal power because I have hope. I have extreme personal power because I have optimism for tomorrow. I have extreme personal power because I look at the areas of my life on a weekly basis and I say, where have I been stuck? Where am I fearful? What can I do this next week as the next right action of integrity? Everything we've talked about, because here, you flip all of these. Watch what happens in your life, right? You flip rejection to doing the things that will bring greater connection in your life. Watch the quality of your life go up. You stop worrying about what will be ruined, and you start remembering that there's always a tomorrow, and you have hope and optimism, and you just always ask, okay, there's not ruin, what's my next right action of integrity? And you keep moving forward even through the disasters of life. Watch the courage that enters your heart there. Watch the confidence that comes in when you keep moving through the storm. Guess what happens? When regret is free, you let that go. You're gone. You're just not worried about the regret of, if I do this, maybe things will turn out bad. And you said, okay, what would I need to do so I don't experience regret at the end of my life? What positive actions could I take to live a life of my own so I don't have regret? So I'm proud of my life, because pride on the other side of regret feels good. Then responsibility. What would it, instead of saying, well, what if I can't handle it? Or what if I'm not responsible? You said, you know what? I'm totally responsible for this. I am able to shape this, guide this, change this, make it better. Now you're really stepping in your personal power. And when you move through these things on just a very tactical weekly basis, you're aware of these fears and you start flipping them. You start flipping them, you start flipping them, you start flipping them. You get in this rhythm and all of a sudden you say, wow, I feel really courageous in my life. And that's when you start making your greatest contributions.
Hey y'all, it's Brendon, and in this episode we're gonna talk about something that came up way more often than I ever imagined after we launched our study of high performers worldwide. And as much as I've taught people how to succeed and taught them to master their mindset, taught them the habits that we know literally lead to long-term success, I cannot believe the number of people who wrote in or asked throughout this year, this last 12 months, like, hey Brendon, like, I know what to do, but I kind of suffer sometimes from imposter syndrome. You know, I feel like I'm going through the motions, but I don't feel like I'm, worth it, or I don't feel like I can see myself succeeding like other people did. I feel like I'm faking it sometime. Like, what do you do if you ever deal with imposter syndrome? And amazingly, I love to share with people, that was kind of part of the story that one of the persons who I interviewed for High Performance Habits, which I hope you guys all have, there's a link in this post where you can get a free hardcover copy, that this woman was dealing with, where she felt like she just couldn't really break through, and she knew achievement wasn't her problem, but alignment was her problem. She knew how to get stuff done, but she really wasn't getting stuff done in an alignment with her true character, her true beliefs, her true values, the things that really lit her up and made her happy and succeeding. She kind of felt like she was going through the motions sometimes, or copying other people. And that imposter syndrome also sometimes made her not feel confident enough to put herself out there, because she thought, who am I? Or I can't compare with them. Or that imposter syndrome really sort of bled into her work, where she felt like, well, you know what? This isn't gonna work for me. I don't really belong here. And so if you ever felt any of that, this is the episode for you. I've got some notes here. I've been thinking about this quite a bit as we head into this time of year, where a lot of people are looking back to this year, last 12 months. And I'd like to ask you, do you feel like you really lived your most authentic, vibrant, true, passionate, productive you?
Do you feel like sometimes you were faking it till you made it? Do you feel like sometimes you just didn't belong? Even if you were successful or you're doing good things, you felt like, well, I'm not like them. I don't really belong here. If that's true for you, then I'd really love for you to take some notes on this episode. I'm trying to change up how we're doing these, kind of get in your face a little bit more, do a little bit more coaching as you guys have been requesting. Obviously, we have products and programs for that. Those links are also in this post somewhere, but I felt like just taking on this imposter syndrome for you. And it was a struggle. I had to take some notes because I'm gonna be honest, I don't think I ever felt it the way that most people talk to me about it. And partially that was because I was young, dumb, and naive when I began in this industry. Right? In this industry, if you're watching me on YouTube or later on Facebook or somewhere else out there on the interwebs, you know that it's a fairly young industry. I started doing major online courses and development in terms of like personal and professional development online and teaching that as far back as 2006, which was really early. You gotta remember, that's like before the iPhone, right? That was a long time ago. That was when most people would like cancel something or refund something that I gave them, not because of the quality, but because the buffer speed on the video is really big. So I kind of lucked out to begin in this industry when it was like the Wild West. There weren't many of us, I was like one of the pioneers in personal online courses, like personal development online courses, like way early. So I didn't enter an industry where there were a lot of super established people outside of there were major authors, there were some major, motivational speakers, there were some people who were doing seminars, but social media wasn't there yet. And this whole world where we have influencers all over Instagram now, like all day long, you can swipe through them. I didn't feel like I was competing with them. So I know that might sound like big-headed to say I didn't feel imposter syndrome, but I just didn't because I began something that was really fresh. I also had the benefit of being naive enough to just do my own thing without really, at the very beginning, seeking out other role models and mentors. I didn't really, I didn't have a peer set. I started this industry, I started with nothing. I was bankrupt. So I wasn't around other people where I could compare myself all day and ask whether I belonged. I just had this passion, and I was just gonna give everything into this passion and not worry about what other people thought and not worry even about how I felt. I was just gonna do the hard work, show up, and make it happen. And so that might be part of my message to you today. If you have that imposter syndrome, stop worrying about whether you belong. I always tell millennials, especially a lot of folks who I get to coach at that age, successful entrepreneurs and startup founders in Silicon Valley especially, I tell them, hey, listen, stop asking whether or not you belong and start asking whether or not you're being of service. Part of the imposter syndrome comes from the selfie syndrome. Just thinking about myself. Am I right? Do I really fit in? Am I good enough? Am I worthy enough? And it's I, worry. It's from this selfie generation where we're all taking pictures of ourselves and thinking about how we portray ourselves all the time and how do I portray myself? Does it fit in with everything else? And because it doesn't, I don't feel like I belong. Part of it's stop asking if you belong, start asking if you're being of absolute service every day. Because if you feel like you're being absolute service every day, you're not gonna worry whether you fit in as much, you're gonna worry whether you're getting the job done. Right? You're gonna worry whether or not you're actually contributing value. Because I think one part of the imposter syndrome is that people don't feel like they're adding value, and if they're really honest, they know they're not. And because they're not adding value, they feel like, gosh, this isn't right for me, or I'm faking it, and the fact is they are. So let's talk about 4 ways to deal with this. Number 1, if you have the imposter syndrome and it's firing off and you don't feel like you belong or you feel like you're faking it and you don't deserve it or you're not worthy, well then job number 1 is stop faking it. Start asking, how can you do what you're doing in a way that you feel like is authentic, real, and adding real value the way that you would do it. Stop trying to do it the way everyone else is doing, because that's what faking it ultimately is. It's you're just conforming and you're copying and you're doing what other people what they're doing, and no wonder you feel like crap. Because if you show up every day and you live like a copy, you're never gonna feel that vibrancy comes from personal freedom, that comes from personal authenticity, that comes from knowing this day is mine. Because if you live each day as another person, you never get that gift of this day's mine. I got it. this is real for me. And so of course you feel like a fake and a phony because you're showing up running everybody else's playbook, trying to fit into everybody else's thing. And I'm here to tell you, listen, I know I'm being a little hard sometimes in my videos, but I'm here to, I do that because I'm cheering you on. I know that no matter who you are and where you're watching this or when you're listening to this, I know this about you. You've got a bottomless level of potential. You have the ability to figure things out and live life on your terms and add a level of value into the world that I can't do, that anybody else you follow, watch, they can't do because they're not you. They haven't lived uniquely in your shoes. They haven't studied what you study or observed what you have observed or dealt with everything that you've dealt with or had the same exact aspirations and dreams. There's 7 billion people on the planet. We're all unique. And so you've got to say, okay, if I feel like an imposter here, what would my truth be in this space? What would, if I stepped away and I just, what would be real for me to do? Your job one is to stop faking it, stop conforming, stop copying and say, how would I do this and add a unique value that I'm passionate about? And that helps immediately break some of that imposter syndrome. Number 2, if you feel like you are experiencing imposter syndrome, number 2 is stop avoiding difficulties. What happens is because you don't feel like you belong, or you don't feel like it's real for you, or you don't deserve that level of success, you back off, and your primary strategy is avoidance. You start avoiding those difficult tasks each day that actually give you momentum and progress towards the thing so you can feel it and integrate it and know it is you, right? You're not getting that momentum forward on the things that matter, so you're not getting that identity that says, wow, this is me, I am making this happen. Instead, you're observing it and you're avoiding it. And so as you see people do great things or you avoid the difficult hardships, your psychology starts saying, hey, you're full of crap. You're not even trying. You're not even doing it. You know what? Yeah, you showed up here, but you're just going through the motions and you're not taking on the tough stuff. And here's a weird thing. If you're not getting momentum, you won't have the mindset of authenticity. If you're just kind of kicking tires or dipping your toe in the water, your brain goes, I'm fake. This isn't real. You'll always feel like an imposter if you don't get real momentum. When you get real momentum, your brain goes, hey, this is us. We're doing this. This is real. And the identity of an achiever in that space that you are in, starts firing, and now it starts feeling real. You're like, wow, I got this. I'm doing this. This is good. And the imposter syndrome starts going away. The third big idea to help you do exactly that and to deal with imposter syndrome is to work daily goals. You cannot keep showing up random to so many days of your life because in reaction, we feel smaller. In reaction, we feel constrained and constricted by the world. We feel like things are unfair. In reaction, we're less motivated. In reaction, we won't break through. So you gotta have goals built out that you're moving towards that does give you that identity of achievement and that identity of realness that says, hey, I'm doing this. And so here's what I need you to do. I need you to look at the next 12 months and I need you to set at least 5 big goals for this next year. Then I want you to break each of those 5 goals down into 5 different deadlines for each quarter. Meaning if you've got one goal for the year, I want you to set down a deadline for quarter 4, quarter 3, quarter 2, quarter 1. So that today, as you go out these next 12 months, as an example, you go, okay, in quarter 1, I'm gonna achieve this deadline that's gonna help me move towards this goal by the end of the year. Quarter 2, I'm gonna achieve this deadline that will help me move even closer. Quarter 3, even closer. Quarter 4, we've achieved it. Make sense? So you're busting down quarterly goals or quarterly deadlines. Then you're saying, okay, what does that mean? What are the major activities I need to do each week leading into that? And then each day leading to that. Just work it backwards, my friend. Because you know when you don't have confidence, when you don't have clarity. So if you're like, I wanna do it, and I'm kind of doing it, and things are going okay, but I still feel like it's not real for me, and I don't like it. Partially, the reason is you just don't know what to do. And when we don't know what to do, when we lack competence, we also lack confidence, right? We're always talking about this in my high performance work. Hopefully you read this in High Performance Habits. It's that issue of the competence confidence loop. And we're not going to get you more competent if you don't try new things, which requires confidence. And if you try new things, you learn more, which gives you confidence. So it's this loop, right? And I think it's really important that you understand, if you're not working goals every day, if you're just reacting and doing tasks, fulfilling everybody else's needs, that's going to eat away. Even if you have a lot of success, even if you're doing great. And that's where I really tell people, when the imposter syndrome really sucks is when you're actually getting ahead, you are doing good things, like things are happening, but you still don't feel like you're worthwhile. And that's happening because you're not celebrating those goals along the way. You're doing everything, but you're never ever feeling everything. So it's not like the wins aren't being integrated into your identity to make you feel like, oh, this is real. I deserve this because I looked at what was forward, I measured it, I broke it down, I judiciously, conscientiously moved forward. Like if we don't know that we are like conscientiously, with real discipline, moving forward and gaining momentum because we chose it, we willed it, then it's easy to look around and go, yeah, I'm with these other people, but I don't feel like I belong because they must have really earned it and I just kind of lucked into it. Because if you feel you lucked into it, that imposter syndrome will always be there. Listen, I feel deeply grateful that I've achieved the level of successes that I've wanted in my life and with my books or my courses or everything else, and I'm still learning, but I can be deeply grateful, but know that I earned this path, that I honored every single struggle, that I architected it out, that I built the strategies, that lots of failings happened and grace opened up and I got, blessings and benefits. Yeah, there's some luck peppered in there too, but also I showed up every single day and I decided what I was gonna do that day. And because I did that, I decided it, and I stayed disciplined, I don't feel fake. I don't feel like I'm an imposter. I'm like, I earned my way into this spot. And sometimes I wish that, the spot was more abundant, more amazing, more awesome, more connected, just like anybody else. But I don't question the work that went into it. Yeah, sometimes I wish I was further along, just like anybody else. But I can go, you know what? I earned my way into this position. And if you can't say you earned it, of course you feel like an imposter. Fourth big idea, and this is really important, it's so simple, to help overcome that feeling of the imposter thing, part of the feeling of the imposter thing is you don't feel the outcome of your work. And so I want you to start visualizing and meditating on the actual outcome of your contributions. So as an example, if you're a new team member of a new company and you're just like, gosh, I don't really belong here, I don't feel like I'm here, I want you to stop. Every time you feel that imposter syndrome come in, I want you to close your eyes and I want you to visualize yourself doing something, and I want you to visualize yourself experiencing, celebrating, seeing, sensing the outcome of the thing. For example, like for me, I began my career writing books and doing seminars. And I remember being with a group of speakers one time, and they had really they'd done a bunch of seminars and they were really along the way, and I'd only done one or two and I didn't do them well. I went broke doing them. I had no idea what I was doing. And I thought, oh my gosh, do I belong with these guys? Like, can I play at their level in the seminar game? And I remember that doubt coming in, and I remember specifically, I talked with a bunch of them and we were all in this big hotel ballroom. I went over, I got in the hotel elevator and I closed my eyes and I just said, Brendon, just see it, man. And I forced myself to see myself standing in front of 1,000 people in a hotel ballroom for multiple days and just teaching and training and coaching and interacting and having fun and jumping and clapping. And I was like, how would that feel? And I allowed myself to feel it. And what would it look like? And I'd get little details. And I went up, it was maybe 10 floors in that building. And I'll tell you what, from the doubtful kid who entered on floor 0 to the kid who walked out on 10th floor, I felt like 1,000 feet high. I felt so good, because I felt it. And so much of the imposter syndrome is you're just kind of analytically questioning yourself, and you're digging yourself in a hole, and you're doubting yourself, and you're letting your own thoughts poison you versus fuel you. And there's a visualization or a meditation that could be your savior. And that is just anytime you feel it, take a break. Go lay down or sit down, close your eyes, see it, feel it, sense it, and make it more real. Because the reason you feel like you're an imposter is because it feels fake. So make yourself physically feel and see the outcome of your good works. That might be like, if you're gonna start a new nonprofit, like see and experience yourself like, okay, you're building that school, and okay, you're opening the doors and the kids are going in and they're getting their first books, and like you built a school. Like, of course you feel like a fake when you start a nonprofit because you don't know what you're doing. But if you do these things, you've asked how you authentically can do it. You don't avoid the difficult work, you work daily goals, and you constantly keep visualizing and feeling it, visualizing and feeling it. I promise you, my friend, do these things and you'll stop feeling as much of an imposter and you'll start getting real momentum. I keep saying it. You are stronger than you think, and the future holds good things for you. So trust in yourself, honor the struggle, get to work, my friends. These next 12 months, they're yours.
This can be your day for personal growth. This can be that day you committed to and you remember and you go, that was the day I got myself a community. I got better coaches. I committed to making my life the absolute best that I could. This is that day. Make today your growth day. Click the button on this page and sign up right now.